When chaos came knocking, you didn't just open the door, you renovated the entire atmosphere. What was meant to drag you into emotional quicksand became your stage of divine composure. The situation was messy, not a little drama, messy. It was the kind of chaos that makes people's group chats light up, reputations wobble, and fake friends suddenly develop PhDs in your business. Yet somehow you walked through it like a soul that had already seen the script and decided, nah, I'll improvise. Psychologists say that in moments of social conflict, 90% of people either fight or flee. But you, chosen one, did neither. You floated. You refused to let the noise manipulate your narrative. You didn't explain, you didn't justify, and you sure didn't lose your mind trying to convince the blind to see. You simply embodied calm in a storm that wanted your meltdown to be its entertainment. It's funny, though. The same people who threw shade at you are now wearing sunglasses because your composure is blinding them. They can't figure out how you stayed that calm when everything was engineered to break you. They rehearsed your reaction before it even happened, and you denied them the script. That's why they're stunned, because you proved that peace is not passivity. It's strategy. This isn't just about how you handled drama. It's about how you transcended it. You became living evidence that maturity isn't measured by how loud you get, but by how deeply you understand that silence and timing can dismantle lies better than words ever could. You didn't just manage the mess, you mastered it. You turned chaos into a case study on divine restraint. So tonight, we're not just talking about how you handled that messy situation. We're dissecting how you rewrote the manual on emotional warfare. Because everyone's stunned, not by what you did, but by what you didn't do, and how your stillness made more noise than their scandal ever could. Number one, you didn't react, you recalibrated. That's what separated you from everyone else who got caught in the storm. Most people panic when things get messy. They respond instantly, driven by emotion, fear, or the need to defend themselves. But you didn't. You paused, breathed, and adjusted your inner frequency before making a single move. That pause wasn't weakness. It was mastery. It was the kind of calm that only comes from someone who's seen chaos before and refuses to be programmed by it again. While they were busy spreading confusion, you were silently studying the atmosphere. You weren't trying to win arguments or prove innocence. You were tuning yourself back to peace, because peace is power that can't be manipulated. You understood something most never will. Energy controls outcomes, and whoever controls their energy controls the entire situation. That's what you did. You shifted the vibration without saying a word. You made sure you weren't matching the madness, and that's why everything eventually turned in your favor. People don't realize how strategic that level of calm is. They think stillness means doing nothing, but you were actually recalculating the entire equation. You knew that reacting too quickly would give them access to your emotional blueprint. And once they have that, they can pull your strings like a puppet. So you chose silence as a shield, not because you were scared, but because you knew how easily chaos feeds on attention. You starved it. Behind the scenes, God was downloading the next move while they were still gossiping about the last one. And that's the secret. While they were performing, you were preparing. That's why the tables turned so quietly that they didn't even notice until their own plan collapsed. You didn't have to retaliate. You just elevated. Every time you refused to be triggered, the trap malfunctioned. Every time you chose peace, confusion lost its grip. The truth is, not everyone will understand this kind of spiritual control. It's not about pretending nothing hurts. It's about mastering what deserves your reaction. You recalibrated, and in doing so you exposed how loud their chaos was compared to your control. That's why they're stunned, because you handled what was designed to destroy you like someone who already knew it couldn't. Number 2, you proved that wisdom is louder than revenge. When everything went left, you could have easily fought back, exposed people, or gone toe-to-toe with those who tried to drag your name through the dirt. But you didn't. You understood that revenge might make you feel powerful for a moment, but wisdom builds power that lasts. You knew the difference between reacting for attention and responding for elevation. Instead of feeding their drama, you studied it, learned from it, and turned it into strategy. That's the move that silenced everyone. The quiet intelligence that said, "I'm not wasting my divine energy proving anything." You watched people lose themselves trying to destroy you, while you gained clarity by letting them. That's the part they didn't see coming. They thought your silence meant defeat, but really it was calculation. You knew that fools destroy themselves when left alone. You didn't have to intervene. You just had to stay still long enough for their own behavior to reveal who they really were. And it did, beautifully. Time exposed everything you stayed silent about. Wisdom became your weapon, and it hit harder than any retaliation could have. They underestimated how powerful it is to stay grounded when everything around you is trying to provoke you. They mistook your discipline for weakness, when in truth, it was divine intelligence. You knew that reacting emotionally only validates their lies, but keeping your peace forces people to question the truth. You didn't need to convince anyone. You let the results speak. You played the long game, and time did what your words couldn't. That's what threw them off balance. They expected chaos. You gave them order. What makes this moment so powerful is that your restraint wasn't about pride. It was about purpose. You understood that your destiny was too big to waste explaining to people who were never going to see the truth anyway. So you gave that energy back to your growth, your peace, and your mission. You proved that revenge isn't intelligence. Wisdom is. And that's why they're all stunned now. Because the one they tried to break didn't just survive. You evolved. And your evolution became the very thing that destroyed their narrative. Number 3, you didn't defend your character. You let it speak in divine timing. That takes a level of strength most people don't have, because the natural instinct is to rush into defense mode the moment someone lies about you. But you knew that explaining yourself too early would only feed their confusion. You understood that the truth doesn't need a publicist. It needs patience. So, while they were busy building lies, you were busy building yourself. And that's what made all the difference. You trusted that the truth would find its own microphone when the noise died down. At first, your silence looked strange to people who didn't understand strategy. They mistook it for guilt. They thought your calm meant surrender. But you knew how this game worked. The moment you start defending yourself to the wrong audience, you've already lost control of the story. So you refused to play their game. You let them talk. Let them twist the facts. Let them feel victorious. You didn't need to win the argument, because you were too focused on winning the outcome. There's something powerful about not rushing God's process of vindication. You understood that divine justice doesn't work on human timing. It works on evidence, exposure, and alignment. Every lie that was told against you became part of the setup that would later prove your innocence. When the truth finally surfaced, it didn't just clear your name. It revealed everyone's role in the deception. And when that happened, your silence suddenly became the loudest voice in the room. By the time people realized what really happened, it was too late for them to rewrite their guilt. The same mouths that lied about you couldn't speak anymore because your consistency exposed their inconsistency. You didn't have to clap back. Your growth did it for you. The same people who once doubted you had to sit back and watch your integrity outlive their gossip. You proved that time doesn't destroy the truth, it refines it. And when the truth finally showed up, it didn't knock, it stormed in with receipts. You didn't just come out vindicated, you came out upgraded. Because while they were chasing attention, You were gaining elevation, and that's why everyone's stunned. You let your character finish the conversation they tried to start without you. Number 4, you made maturity look dangerous. There's a quiet power in the way you held your composure when everything was designed to push you off balance. People mistook your restraint for softness, not realizing it was a form of spiritual dominance. You weren't frozen. You were focused. You moved with the sharpness of someone who's learned that not every battle deserves a swing, and not every insult deserves acknowledgement. You understood that the strongest response isn't always physical or verbal. Sometimes it's energetic. You refused to let other people's chaos dictate your rhythm, and that's what made your stillness so intimidating. You operated like someone who had already been trained in the unseen. Someone who knew that the visible world is just the stage, not the strategy room. You saw the manipulation, the bait, and the emotional traps, but instead of reacting, you studied them. You let your silence do what no argument could, expose intention. The truth is, emotional control is one of the rarest forms of power because it breaks systems built on reaction. You broke patterns that others thought you'd repeat. You didn't meet fire with fire. You made fire lose interest. Your calm confused people who thrive on chaos. They were waiting for you to explode, to lose your temper, to prove their version of you right. But you never gave them that satisfaction. You kept your dignity when the situation begged you to lose it. And in doing so, you flipped the script. Suddenly, they looked foolish for fighting with someone who refused to fight back. Your maturity became their mirror, and what they saw in that reflection made them uncomfortable. Every test you passed taught you how to control not just your reactions, but your energy. You learned that peace isn't passive, it's tactical. It's knowing when to step back, when to speak, and when to let divine law do the heavy lifting. You turned every attempt to provoke you into a lesson in restraint. They wanted you to perform. You chose to transform. And that's why your maturity looks dangerous, because it's not just self-control, it's spiritual authority. You mastered your emotions so deeply that no one could weaponize them against you anymore. Number 5, you stopped explaining to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. That was one of the most freeing, yet hardest decisions you ever made. Because at first, you genuinely believed that if you just spoke clearly enough, kindly enough, or calmly enough, people would get it. But you learned the brutal truth. Some people never wanted to understand you in the first place. Their goal wasn't clarity, it was control. They weren't confused by accident. They were confused on purpose. It served their agenda to twist your words, to make you look like the problem, and to keep the spotlight off their own intentions. That's when it hit you. Explaining yourself to people who have already decided who you are is emotional quicksand. The more you speak, the deeper you sink. They take your words, distort them, and feed them back to others as evidence. You realize that they weren't listening to understand. They were listening to weaponize. Every detail you shared only helped them craft a smarter attack next time. So you did the wisest thing you could do. You stopped feeding them material. You went quiet, not because you had nothing to say, but because they no longer deserved access to your truth. People call that coldness, but it's not cold, it's clarity. You recognized that truth doesn't chase validation, and integrity doesn't audition for acceptance. You understood that real peace starts when you no longer feel the urge to prove what's already evident in your actions. The moment you stopped explaining, everything shifted. The same people who once manipulated your words were left starving for new content. Their gossip lost its flavor because you stopped participating in their script. And that's when they began to panic, because silence removes their power. You no longer gave them emotional fuel. You stopped showing up to the arguments they rehearsed in their heads. You stopped defending yourself to people who secretly enjoyed the chaos. Instead, you protected your peace like a sacred fortress. You trusted time to reveal what words couldn't. And it did. Every lie eventually collapsed under its own weight, and all you had to do was stand still. You didn't lose your voice. You just learned that not everyone is worthy of hearing it. Number 6, you transmuted betrayal into a strategy manual. What was supposed to break you ended up becoming the greatest classroom of your life. Every wound became data. Every disappointment became revelation. You stopped seeing betrayal as pure suffering and started seeing it as an unfiltered education in human nature. You learned how envy hides behind compliments, how manipulation dresses itself as concern, and how betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it wears the face of love. That realization didn't make you bitter, it made you brilliant, because instead of reacting to the pain, you extracted wisdom from it. You began to notice patterns, how people test boundaries before they break them, how loyalty fades the moment your silence can no longer be exploited, and how betrayal never comes out of nowhere. It's been rehearsed in whispers long before it happens. You started understanding motives on a deeper level. You learned how to read energy, not words. That's why it's so hard for anyone to fool you now, because you've seen too much. You recognize the tone of manipulation before the sentence even finishes. You can sense dishonesty in the smallest gesture. What they meant for harm recalibrated your discernment to divine precision. The beauty of it all is that you didn't let betrayal harden you. It refined you. You turned pain into perception. You learned to love with awareness, trust with boundaries, and forgive without forgetting the lesson. You don't carry resentment, you carry data. Every backstab gave you insight into what drives people to betray what they can't become. You started moving differently, not out of fear, but out of understanding. You began strategizing your moves like someone who has already studied the blueprint of betrayal and learned how to never fall for it again. Now your energy is untouchable because it's informed. Your spirit recognizes patterns before they repeat. You don't chase closure, you collect clarity. You didn't just survive betrayal, you upgraded from it. You built a mental and spiritual defense system that no amount of gossip or deceit can penetrate. That's what makes you so dangerous to deception now. You turned what was meant to end you into the very strategy that ensures you'll never be blindsided again. Number 7. You became unreachable because you finally stopped explaining divine moves to earthly minds. There came a point when you realized not everyone is meant to understand the way you move, because your instructions don't come from logic, they come from revelation. You stopped trying to make sense to people who only see the surface of things. You no longer felt the need to justify why you left certain spaces, why you went quiet, or why you refused to engage. You knew something they didn't, that divine timing never submits to human reasoning. Every decision you made was a response to a spiritual download that only made sense between you and God. At first, people called you inconsistent, strange, even prideful. They said you'd lost your way, when in truth you'd found a new direction that didn't require their validation. You were being guided through paths that logic couldn't map. You were being moved out of environments that your spirit had outgrown. And because most people operate from fear, they couldn't comprehend how you were moving with such unpredictable faith. They couldn't decode your silence or your shifts because they were still trying to measure the spiritual with physical tools. You became unreachable not because you built walls, but because you elevated. You stopped explaining your steps to people who weren't even qualified to understand your instructions. You realize that when God gives you an assignment, explaining it to those who haven't heard it will only invite unnecessary opinions and distractions. You learn to move in quiet obedience instead of public validation. And every time you followed that divine intuition, something miraculous happened. Manipulative connections began to dissolve, false alignments exposed themselves, and peace replaced confusion. People are only now realizing that your weird moves were divine choreography. Every exit they judged was protection. Every silence they mocked was preparation. Every redirection they questioned was strategy. You weren't avoiding people, you were being repositioned. The same ones who doubted you are now studying your moves, trying to figure out how everything worked out in your favor without explanation. You stopped translating heaven's instructions into earthly language. And that's when heaven started backing your steps in ways no human approval ever could. You became unreachable because your alignment became untouchable. Number 8, you let the mess expose everyone's real character. That's the brilliance of your growth. You stopped chasing clarity through confrontation and started allowing time and chaos to do the revealing. When everything fell apart, you didn't rush to fix or defend anything. You stood back, steady and observant, knowing that storms don't just destroy, they expose. You learned that the quickest way to see a person's truth is to watch how they behave when confusion enters the room. Loyalty becomes visible. Envy finds a microphone and people's true motives step into the light without you saying a word. You didn't have to play detective. The situation did the work for you. The same people who swore they had your back started whispering the moment your name wasn't shining as bright. Some who once prayed with you began preying on you. But instead of feeling broken, you felt enlightened. You saw who was genuinely with you and who was just renting space in your peace until a better opportunity came along. That realization hurt, but it also freed you, because the mess didn't destroy your circle, it cleaned it. There's something powerful about refusing to panic in the middle of exposure. You stayed still long enough to let truth surface naturally. You didn't argue or beg for loyalty that was never real. You let people tell on themselves through their reactions, and they did, beautifully. The same mouths that spoke kindness in front of you couldn't hide their jealousy when you were tested. The same hands that once clapped for you started shaking when your stability returned. The chaos brought everything to light, and you didn't need to say a thing. You learned that pretending and pressure can't coexist. When life applied heat, masks melted. You saw people's true vibration, who moved from love, who moved from fear, and who moved from hidden competition. It became so clear that you didn't even have to confront them. You just quietly adjusted your access list. That's how you regained your peace, not by demanding truth, but by letting life reveal it. The mess was never your punishment. It was your protection. It removed the wrong people without you lifting a finger, and that's why you now walk lighter, wiser, and untouchable. Number 9, you proved that emotional intelligence is a spiritual weapon. You mastered the art of fighting without fighting, of standing in the middle of chaos and refusing to let it rewrite your internal peace. While everyone else was reacting, over-explaining, or trying to win the crowd, you held your ground with quiet power. You understood that not every attack deserves a response, and not every provocation requires a performance. That awareness was your advantage. You used composure like a sword, cutting through manipulation without raising your voice. That's what unsettled them. The fact that they couldn't pull you into emotional combat, no matter how hard they tried. Your calm wasn't weakness. It was calculated dominance. You knew that people reveal themselves through how they try to control your emotions. And when you didn't take the bait, they had nothing left to work with. You dismantled entire plots with silence because they were counting on you to react in a way that confirmed their lies. But you didn't. You moved with precision, not panic. And that's when you realized emotional control is a language only spiritually mature people can speak. It's fluent in restraint, fluent in discernment, fluent in timing. You understood that peace isn't passive, it's an active state of mastery. It's standing in a storm and deciding, I won't let this energy into my system. That level of self-governance made you untouchable. You stopped being reactive and became responsive, guided by wisdom instead of impulse. And once you reached that level, their manipulation lost its power. They couldn't trigger what no longer existed. You didn't match their energy. You replaced it with peace so steady that it disarmed everything sent against you. That's why your calm confused them. They came expecting a scene, and you gave them strategy. They wanted proof that you were breaking down, but you gave them evidence that you were built differently. You turned emotional intelligence into a shield, not to hide, but to preserve your energy for divine moves only. That's the real weapon, staying centered when the enemy's entire plan depends on your reaction. You didn't just keep your peace, you weaponized it. And that's how you won battles that no one even knew you were fighting. Number 10. You outgrew the room that wanted to contain you. What looked like chaos was really a divine eviction notice. The messy situation wasn't just random drama. It was a signal that your spirit had expanded beyond the limits of your old environment. You weren't meant to fix that place, those people, or that dynamic. You were meant to evolve past it. God used conflict to break your comfort zone, to make you realize that what once fit you was now suffocating your growth. The tension wasn't punishment, it was a redirection. You had to be pushed out so your peace could breathe again. At first it felt unfair. You kept asking yourself why things suddenly went wrong with people you once trusted, or why certain spaces that once felt welcoming suddenly became hostile. But the truth is, your frequency changed. You stopped resonating with dysfunction. You started speaking truth in a place that preferred silence, setting boundaries in a circle that thrived on chaos.